All right, so we're here with Christian Lanng, the CEO of Tradeshift, and we're talking about sort of social interactions in business, and it's a topic close to your heart. So just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on some of this. So for starters, I mean, who cares? Social interactions in business. A lot of people would say it's, business is business. There's no room for it. Why do you think it's important?
So I think this is one of the things that always really caught my interest as I started getting into business software and looking at business. I'm educated as a sociologist, and for me it's always natural to look at any process or any system and see what are all the parts. And I think if you look at the system of business everywhere right now, it's one thing that's striking is that as we're building the software for business, we have ripped out everything that is to do with human relationships. If you look at an accounting system that's keeping track of all your transactions, it's all of the numbers, it's all of the values, but your business is so much more than that. It's your relationships, it's your connections. Most business gets done in a social context. You meet with people. There's a reason that many meetings still are face to face and so on. And I just think that we have missed that. When we talk about software, we completely missed the social side of business in the software we build today, and I think that's really one of the big things that Tradeshift is trying to change.
So, do you think it's always been like that, or is there a point in time where it went terribly wrong? Is there something to blame?
So I think if you look at the roots of modern business software, if you look at the roots of accounting systems, stuff like SAP, classical workflow, it all goes around 200 years back. So as you had the Industrial Revolution in England, you started to put together the first assembly lines. You literally had people standing with these machines, moving objects, one step ahead. And what you found was, for the first time ever, you had factories that were so large that you really needed a supply chain. You needed to think about how you bought stuff. You need to start thinking about how you processed. And what you really did as the first model for interaction in the finance side of these factories, or for the side processing all of these transactions, was you just took the model of the assembly line and you moved that in, and it became what we can call account payable today. So if you look at account payable processes in most large companies, what you're really doing is you're pushing around this paper on an assembly line, and people are stamping it. You're like, I'll delegate it to you, you will approve it, somebody else have to approve it, and so on. And I think when you really start to think about it, there's no value in that process. There's no value for the people participating. There's really no value for finance. It just needs to be done because of compliance. And I think what's great about Tradeshift is we automate most of that stuff. It just goes away. It really, just becomes data that flows. So if I sent you an invoice, I probably already received the purchase order completely electronically, and we can match it straight away and just put it in the AP system. You don't have to look at it. And I think that, again, changes the role of what we call workflow. It doesn't need to be this assembly line. It can really be about collaboration, because what you're left with, if you can automate all of the boring stuff, is really the interesting problems, the thing that requires you to think, not just the stuff that needs you to push another stamp on a document. So when we built Tradeshift Workflow, we focused a lot on collaboration. How can we together solve a problem? But not just on our side, but also how can we, for instance, interact with our supplier, our customer, in solving this issue. So I think the future of stuff like business software, but especially workflow and all these systems, is much more collaborative. And I think what's interesting is that's also the way our supply chain have changed. That's even the way our factory floor have changed. The biggest method today in manufacturing is lean manufacturing, as pioneered by Toyota. And they literally built a very different assembly line, one where you require people on the assembly line to think and to make their own decisions about stuff they see. And I think it's time we make the same transition in finance.
So I sort of think the point that you're getting at here is business is innately social. It always has been, and it always will be. Yet some of the tools that we're trying to interact with on a daily basis don't really support that natural tendency to be social.
Yeah, I think, that's a clear trend. If you look at most business software today, it doesn't have the functions for it. You might be running a third-party system like Yammer or something else, where you will have like the water cooler of the company. But in our core business processes, where we do business, there's no support for that. And I think it's not about just being social for being social. It's about being social because social is better for business. So let's say you're my supplier and I'm the customer, and we have a problem we're trying to resolve. Maybe there's some parts missing. Maybe I didn't get what I ordered. We could either, sit on the phone and have multiple meetings trying to solve this, or, maybe we could just interact straight around that document where we have the challenge. So we share the business process, and it's something we do together. And I think that's really the future of business software. Not that social is something that goes on outside, not that social is something that goes on just when we meet, but it's really embedded in all our processes. And not because it's just social, but because it's a better way to do business.
Yeah, and I know you've spoken a lot before when we were traveling through China just recently and speaking with journalists and everything there. You were reiterating to people, and even in your presentation, you sort of explained that the workforce of the future, and not even of the future, the workforce of literally tomorrow is going to expect this sort of interaction and this sort of social capability from the software that they're going to be tasked with using.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's not that they necessarily want social. So, and I don't think it's the workforce of tomorrow. I think it's the workforce for today. I think the people who are already working in companies today, they want better software. And we see this all the time with our customers. So if you look at, some of the challenges they have is, the software they're using is not like, if you look at the workflow process when you're approving documents inside a large company, it doesn't have any value for them. It doesn't have any value to go into that software and participate. It's something they do for somebody else. But if that software could give them updates about what's happening with their suppliers, if that software could help them make better business decisions because it's connected to a network, it becomes something else entirely. And I think if you look at the next generation, they expect business software that operates as networked, as you can say, as Twitter, Facebook. It's not just about, I think often when you talk about Generation Y and so on, it's not just about it being mobile or it being pretty, or it's really about you already learned to work a certain way. When you go to university, you learn to collaborate. Maybe you're using Google Docs. You learn to communicate on Facebook. Most university groups today, they have a Facebook group where they collaborate. So I think, and then you come to a workplace and none of that stuff is there. You're going into an SAP interface that's literally ancient, and your ability to communicate and use for what is for you natural business process is just not there.
Stripped away.
Yeah. So.
Right. Well, thanks very much. That was just a quick little video blog from Tradeshift CEO Christian Lanng. We'll bring you more soon.
Thank you, Peter.